Thanks for coming, everybody, and a special thanks to all my co-authors. I think I saw Hunduk a minute ago. There he is. Okay, so I'm going to talk about CALIOP-derived smoke plumes and therefore fire in general. We know that temperatures are increasing in the northern hemisphere upper latitudes, particularly in the winter and the spring, and what this leads to is a longer growing season, longer fire season, increased potential evapotranspiration, increased extreme fire weather, and also increased fire in terms of area burn, fire frequency, severity, and intensity. Fire researchers already believe that climate-induced fire regime change is something that's already happening right now in the northern hemisphere. This isn't something that's going to happen in the future. It's already with us. Cumulative fire severity is expected to increase by 1 to greater than 3 times, depending on where you are geographically and at what year you're looking. Fire season length is also predicted to increase by 3 to greater than 20 days, depending again on geographic location and the year. If we don't get injection height right now, then it'll be difficult to get it right in the future, and it affects the transport of pollutants that are modeled, and this influences our ability to mitigate and understand air quality, and also biomass burning is a strong feedback to the climate system. It changes patterns of precipitation after land cover is changed. That's a change in albedo and smoke, change in patterns of, not smoke, clouds, and in patterns of clouds, and also black carbon and landing on snow and ice has another feedback. Previously, we didn't have the information to get smoke plume information correct, so we used Briggs equations modeled from smokestacks. But now we have an increasing number of ground-based LiDAR and aircraft verification measurements, and we have 2 satellites that are able to be put together to establish the statistics necessary to be able to get this right, and they're Mizer and Calypso. These are completely different instruments. Mizer needs well-defined plumes, columns, so it looks at the stereo height, so it needs an inside and an outside in order to look at injection height. Large fires are often socked in, so if you're looking at large fires with Mizer, these are also often missed. Mizer has a substantially larger swath width than Calypso, so they will see more fires and more near-field fires. Mizer is a morning overpass, so it doesn't get the natural variation of smoke plume injection as it grows over time in the day. And smoke plume injection heights are usually maximum in late afternoon when the relative humidity is lowest. Calypso has an increased capability of detecting optically thin smoke layers, and paired with back trajectories, it's able to identify plume heights from extensive fields in the atmosphere, and it identifies smoke temporally, randomly in time and space. We understand that fire plume injection height is defined by the intensity of a fire, and that's defined by the ecosystem and how dry the fuels are to burn. So the driving force here is fire weather and fuels. Not only fuels in larger ecosystems like a boreal forest. You can see the difference here in the savanna fires and the boreal fires, but I would argue that we need to break them down even more than that. This is a boreal fire. It's a boreal system. It's Pinus sylvestris forest. You see a crown fire and a surface fire. So even within the same system, it's a boreal forest, Pinus sylvestris, we get different types of fire regimes depending on how dry the fuels. This is another type of boreal forest fire, completely different type of fuels and plume injection height. These are other fuels. We're still in the boreal forest. We haven't left the boreal forest. So these are boreal forest fuels that may not burn that often. It could be 300 to 800 years, but when they dry and they burn, the injection height is going to be extreme and likely to pop through the tropopause. These are pictures of typical fire plume columns at 5 to 6 kilometers, 5 to 7 kilometers. And less typical plumes, pyrocumulonimbus at 10 to 12 kilometers, and plumes do, not often, but they do pop through the tropopause. So what we're doing is we're looking at Calypso data. We're extracting the aerosols, we're transporting them back in time until there is a coincident with a fire detection and determining the plume injection height. This is done in three-dimensional space and time. It is not an easy process. So every Calliope air parcel is associated with a particular fire, particular land cover parameters, and also meteorological variables at a particular location and space and time. Just to give you an example of how we start, this is NOAA smoke plume data. We've overlaid the tracks, the Calypso tracks, and keep in mind this small little piece here that's circled because it looks like it's simple. It looks like it goes back to two particular fires, and it looks like we used it as an example because it looked like a pretty simple case to analyze. It turns out it was not a simple case. So first we extract the aerosols from the Calliope curtains, and we do use aerosols. We don't use the subtyping, we use the aerosols. And if you notice, the signature is different even in this particular plume, and that's because, we didn't know this then, but the smoke can be attributed to different types of fires within that plume. We extract the air parcels, we put them in the trajectory model, initialize the trajectories at 1 second intervals along the Calypso track, and 500 vertical intervals within the smoke segment. And then we take these parcels and we step them back in time every 15 minutes and say, is there a fire? Am I injected from here? Is there a fire? So every 15 minutes is our time step. This is time minus 24 hours in that particular plume. The top panel is horizontal. The bottom panel is showing the vertical in the atmosphere as it goes back in time. You'll note that air travels back faster at higher in the atmosphere, and this is what allows us to detect fires in different places in time so the lower part of the atmosphere would go back slower. This particular fire is injected to 5.2 kilometers, then time minus 36 hours. We are looking at some fires in northwest Montana, and they're injected to approximately 2 kilometers. It turns out that that small plume that we saw a few slides ago is attributed to a number of different fires over a number of different days. And overall, it's 9 separate fires from different days, or 12 event fires, and that was just that very small plume. So, slide change. Not only can we take one plume and distinguish the different fires and attribute that smoke to different fires, but we can also take a number of Calliope overpasses and look at a particular fire and the plume injection height over time. So time is on the x-axis, altitude is on the y-axis, and on the right-hand side we have multiple Calliope overpasses. So if you're looking at one segment of color and a symbol, that is one Calliope overpass. So we put those together in order to get the plume injection height. We're looking at the tripod fire on August 4th, 2006, and this pattern is going to be consistent. We've also found coincident Mizer data, and in every case, not only the tripod fire, but in every case, Calypso and Mizer data are completely compatible. There's no difference. They're consistent if we're looking at the same place and time. What we've added to this graphic is the stable layer, and also in black, the planetary boundary layer, so you can see where the smoke is injected within the planetary boundary layer or outside or within the stable layer. And these are the Mizer detections. There's 3 of them for this particular day at this time. And you can see how they compare to the Calliope data. The red points are the fire radiative power taken from the MODIS fire detections. There were 2 other days, a total of 3, in this greater than month period where we found coincidence and Mizer data. And I'm showing you the next 2. So we can see that the Mizer data at the same place and time are compatible with the Calypso data in these 3 days. And I also wanted you to note that the fire radiative power is on this axis over here. can be read on this axis. So some of them can be quite high. If we look at the smoke plume over the month, this is our result, and these three arrows are pointing to where we have the coincident Mizer data. The notes in black are taken from the ground, the incident management team, but they don't always report column height. They may say the fire was exciting today, and I don't know how to translate that to a plume injection height. So I almost put it in, but I left it out. And if we note this particular point here on the 14th, the reason I'm looking at this one is because the plume injection height is quite high. So I thought it would be worth taking a closer look. And what we see on this particular day is notice fire detections, fires go to sleep at night. So they lay down at night. You don't always get a fire detection. You don't typically get a fire detection. You only get them during the day. So in this particular day, we have fire detections that are observed on both evenings. And not only are they observed, but the fire radiated power is extreme. And this is a day where the smoke plumes were injected above the stable layer, above the boundary layer. So above both the boundary and the stable layer. And in conclusion, I'd just like to say that Calypso data can provide a spatially and temporally random view of fire plume data that's not limited in space and time. One calliope swath can be representative of a complicated three-dimensional temporal and spatial pattern, different fires. Calliope data can be used to define the evolution of smoke in a day. This is completely new. Nobody's done this before. So this is new. Calliope data can be used in many application processes to define plume height and transport models and for air quality use, and also to help us tease apart and define and become more accurate in our climate feedbacks. In concert, the Calliope and Mizer data can be used to add to the statistical knowledge necessary to improve our understanding of plume injection height. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you for this exciting talk. So the question is sort of the product that could arise from this. Will you be generating like a product of the injection heights and sort of relating each overpass with the fires that you traced back? Is that something we can expect sometime?
Yes, if we were funded to do this, which we would love to be. Yes, not only that, but every air parcel is related to a fire and the land cover and its injection height and all the meteorological variables, every air parcel. So that would be in a file, but then also if we put them together, we can get the injection heights of particular fires.
I actually have a follow-up question to that. I know they're not temporally coincident with Mizer, but we have this huge database of Mizer plume heights, and I'm wondering, is there a way to reconcile your approach, maybe to improve those or to add to it? I don't know, your thoughts?
I think it would, yes. But because Calliope data are on all space and time, if you run them backwards, we can put them together to verify it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Great.
Yes. So it is the same.
Anyone else? Any other questions? One more? Oh, Guido.
Can you say something about the relative importance of fire type severity versus ambient weather conditions in plume height?
You said fire, weather, ambient. I didn't hear everything you said. I'm sorry.
So I'm trying to get how important is the fire type versus sort of the weather, not the fire weather, but the general weather.
Well, the general weather is the fire weather, except that the fire weather is precipitation, relative humidity, how long it's been drying, and so wind. So if the fire weather drives the fuels, that's when you get the big fires. If you can have fire weather so bad and fuels dry that you can't control the fire, but you won't have an ignition where there's fuels and fire weather that's intense without a big fire. So one drives, the weather drives the drying of the fuel that drives the size of the fire. So they're all absolutely related, directly related. The weather comes first to dry the fuels. Well, fuels, ignition, weather.